everyone, welcome back. So if you watched the previous episodes, then you already know that things did not end so well. You know how things ended. Michael had officially paid the bride price, and our wedding plans were underway, and everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. Then Michael made a request that shocked my family, as I have said in episode 5. A request so strange that it changed the atmosphere instantly. He didn't want my family to come to Nigeria for the wedding. Imagine, guys. Umefurahi, umepata bwana. We are going for a destination wedding in his country, but anakataa kwamba ni wewe peke yako ndo uende for the wedding. How strange is that, right? Because in our African culture, we know weddings are family gatherings where the bride and the groom would be happy to see both of their family and friends being present on their big day. So at first I thought there had been a misunderstanding. Surely he couldn't be serious, but he was actually very, very serious. I remember sitting there staring at him, waiting for him to laugh, waiting for him to explain, waiting for him to say he was joking, but instead he calmly repeated himself, I think it would be better if you came alone. Guys, the room became silent. The kind of silence that feels heavy, dangerous, and my mother looked at him, then looked at me. You can picture that. Then back at him, and nobody spoke for several seconds, and finally my uncle broke the silence. Akauliza kwa nini? Why? A simple question, one word, but Michael seemed prepared for it, almost too prepared. He smiled and then explained that the ceremony in Nigeria would be small, simple, private. He said bringing many people would create unnecessary expenses, and a flight to Nigeria is only expensive, between 70,000 to 100. That is just for one person. So when he mentioned that, he said bringing many family would create, bringing many people would create unnecessary expenses, unnecessary complications, unnecessary stress. His explanation sounded reasonable though, because it would mean a lot of expenses. And at least it did to me, and my family wasn't convinced though. Not everyone, not even a little at all. And the moment Michael left that evening, the interrogation began, guys. Niliulizwa maswali, and when I say interrogation, I mean interrogation. My mother, my uncles, my aunties, everybody suddenly had questions. Questions I didn't want to hear. Questions I wasn't prepared to answer, guys. And the first person to speak was my mother. Grace, does it make sense to you? I sighed because, nikasema, Mom, it's just a small ceremony. She immediately shook her head. No. What do you mean, no? Nikasema, no family wants their son to marry without witnesses from the bride's side, which makes sense. I tried explaining Michael's reasoning, travel cost, planning, logistics, and everything he had told me, but nobody was buying it actually. It made sense. Not one person. So then my uncle said something that sent chills through me. Sometimes people separate you from those who love you before they hurt you. Sometimes people separate you from those who love you before they hurt you. And the room became quiet. Words of wisdom coming from an old uncle like that. Looking back, I should have taken keen note on that. The room became quiet. I remember feeling angry at uncle, not scared, angry. Because to me, everyone was attacking my man, the man I loved. And nobody was trying to understand him. Nobody was giving him a chance. And at least that's how I saw it. And looking back now, I was blind, completely blind. And over the next few days, tension filled the house. Every conversation somehow led back to Michael, and every discussion turned into an argument because of that. Every warning felt like criticism to me, and I became frustrated, defensive over my man, and emotional. And the more they pushed, the more stubborn I became, a girl in love. And then one night Michael called. I told him everything, every concern, every warning, every argument. There was a long silence. Alinyamaza, then there was a sigh, a deep one, like someone carrying a heavy burden. Akasema, I knew this would happen, princess. Nikamuuliza, what do you mean? Akasema, they don't trust me, hawaniamini. And ikanifanya ni feel guilty. Immediately I felt that guilt. And I started defending him, reassuring him, trying to make him feel better. Fun, isn't it? And my family was worried about me. But somehow I ended up worrying more about him. That was Michael's gift. He knew exactly how to flip situations, reverse psychology, how to make himself look misunderstood, how to make me feel responsible for protecting him. And the conversation lasted almost 3 hours. And by the end of it, I was convinced, guys, everyone else was overreacting. Except for my man, Michael. Michael was calm, reasonable, patient. At least that's what I believed by that time. And a week later, he called again. This time he had exciting news. The wedding date had been finally fixed, had been finalized. Everything was ready. Everything except me, princess. And the moment he said those words, I felt butterflies, excitement, because it was my first time getting married. The wedding was becoming real, actually real, and I was going to be somebody's wife, guys. His wife, the man I loved. And the next few weeks became a blur. There was shopping, packing, preparing, planning, people congratulating me, blah blah blah, people wishing me well. But beneath all the excitement, something felt strange. Something I couldn't explain. Like I almost every night I found something lying awake. I found myself lying awake there and staring at the ceiling, thinking, questioning, wondering, then dismissing those thoughts. Because love and doubt don't live comfortably together, and eventually one of them wins. And in my case, love won. So the night before my flight, my mother came into my room. I'll never forget that conversation we had. Never in my life. She sat there quietly on the edge of my bed. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she reached for my hand and held it tightly. Akasema, Grace. Her voice sounded different that day. Almost kind of emotional. Nikamwambia, yes, mommy. She looked directly into my eyes. Akasema, if everything feels wrong, if anything feels wrong. Akapause kidogo, akaendelea. Come home immediately, my daughter. I laughed nervously. Mom, you're acting like I'm going to war. She didn't laugh. Not even a little. Instead, she said something that still haunts me today. Akasema, sometimes danger doesn't announce itself, my daughter. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. She then hugged me, longer than usual, much longer than usual, and for some reason, I almost cried. The next morning, I headed to the airport. My family came to see me off. The atmosphere felt strange. Nobody seemed excited at all. Nobody seemed happy. Because remember, it's a wedding for your daughter and ni yeye tu peke yake anaenda, so it would feel kind of awkward. Nobody seemed excited, nobody seemed happy. It felt more like a goodbye than a celebration, actually. And I remember hugging everyone, bidding them goodbye, then walking toward the departure gate at the airport. And just before I entered, I looked back, and my mother was standing there watching me. And something about her expression bothered me, actually. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't fear, it was something else. Something I didn't understand at the time. the plane eventually took off, and as Kenya disappeared, and as Kenya disappeared pale ukiwa JKA, ndege ikitake off, so now utakuwa unaona dot. That is what I mean by the word as Kenya disappeared beneath the clouds. I felt two emotions fighting inside me. One ilikuwa excitement, and the other one was uneasiness. And for the first few hours, excitement won actually. I spent most of the time in the flight imagining my future. Okay, a young girl thinking about my wedding, my new life, my husband, my future home, my everything. Then something happened, a small thing, a very small thing actually, but it stayed with me. A woman sitting beside me noticed my excitement. She was also headed to Abuja. So from Lagos, she would proceed to the next flight. And we started talking. I told her I was traveling to get married. Aka smile. She smiled. Then asked where my family was. I explained the way they would not be attending. And immediately a smile faded. Just slightly, but I noticed it. And just enough for someone to notice. And then she said something strange. You are very, very, very brave. And I laughed and asked her why. Then she shrugged. Akasema, I don't think I'd ever do that. And for the first time during the journey, I felt a knot form in my stomach. You know, really strange, a tiny knot. But it was there. And hours later, my flight landed in Nigeria again. We were at the Murtala Muhammad International Airport. But this time, it felt different, very different, because it was my second time, and all the scenarios which have happened, the excitement from my first visit wasn't there anymore. Not completely though. There was a strange feeling sitting in my chest, a feeling I couldn't explain. And as I collected my luggage, I tried convincing myself everything was fine. You remember that expression from Three Idiots movie? All is well. Unajiambia, all is well, all is well. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Even though I was nervous, that's all. Every bride gets nervous, you know, right? And eventually I exited the arrivals terminal. There he was, my Prince Charming. Michael was there waiting and smiling just like before. And the moment he hugged me, some of my anxiety completely disappeared. And not all of it though, but enough. And as we drove away from the airport, I noticed something. We weren't talking. We were not taking the route I remembered from my previous visit. At first, I assumed that maybe it was because of traffic. This was the shortest route possible. We could take a shortcut, kind of, or maybe it was simply I was confused and I couldn't remember every detail. But after nearly an hour, curiosity got the better part of me. Nikamuuliza Michael, akasema yes, princess, where are we going? He smiled. Akasema utaona tu, you'll see. I laughed. Nikasema seriously? Akasmile tena. Akasema you'll see. Princess, don't worry. So the answer should have reassured me. Instead, for reasons I couldn't explain, it made me uncomfortable. As the Lagos city lights gradually disappeared, the roads became quieter, darker, less familiar, and for the first time since meeting Michael, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if my family was right? Oh my God. I looked out the window, then back at my future husband Michael, then out of the window again, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold, guys. There was a black Sav, a SUV car, which had been following us for nearly 20 minutes now. And every turn, every stop, every road, it was still there. And I opened my mouth to say something, then stopped, because at that exact moment, Michael looked into the rearview mirror. And instead of getting worried, guys, he smiled. He smiled. Guys, please stay tuned for the next episode. Huh? In episode 7, we'll discover whether that SUV car is actually connected to Michael. And if I'm simply becoming paranoid, guys, either way, stay tuned.